Well, there are a lot of people that are growing marijuana that are using pesticides and chemicals that are dangerous. And there was one. What was the company that got caught recently, Jamie? They tested their stuff.
Cushy Punch, I believe. Yeah.
Say that again.
Cushy Punch with the microphone got fucked up.
Cushy Punch. We had a guy named John Norris on the podcast, and he wrote a book called Hidden War. And he started off his career as a game warden. Investigating people that caught too much fish, things along those lines. And he thought, hey, what a great job this would be. I'm going to get a job in the great outdoors. I love the outdoors. And, I'll get to do some good for the wildlife. Well, turns out along the way, they started stumbling upon these public land Mexican cartel grow operations where they would grow these marijuana plants, just giant plots of them, and they would use these extremely toxic pesticides.
Oh, yeah.
And also they would use poison to keep animals out. And they had vats of this shit laying around, and some of the marijuana was actually infested with this shit or infected.
Yeah, my friend Amanda Chicago Lewis is this great journalist focused on marijuana, and yeah, she put the fear of God in me about those pesticides and carcinogens. And the other thing is just like these different oils that people are smoking. Some of them are marketed as like all natural, but they find synthetic cannabinoids in them. Mm-hmm. And basically, synthetic cannabinoids like K2 and spice are what they're known as sometimes. And people call it synthetic marijuana, but the big difference is that THC is known as like a partial agonist. So it will, like, these receptors, it will activate them to an extent. You're chilled, it's relaxed. But the cannabinoids, they also interact with the cannabinoid receptors, same as THC, but they're full agonists. And so they make you basically like go crazy, and your heart starts beating fast. You start, people overdose and die on these cannabinoids. And these are all made in China too. I went into a lab in China where they made these, and they made fentanyl analogs.
They let you in?
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole thing. I wrote them on the internet. I made a fake email address, and I said, I'm a drug dealer. I'd like to visit your lab. May I do that when I come to China? And they said, yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's like...
Did you have a fake drug dealer name?
I called myself, what did I call myself? I had this like Skype avatar picture where I looked like a bro, like a 23-year-old dude with like big hair, like kind of a stoner look. And they just, they said, yeah, come by. And so I went to Shanghai, and I met this guy at the train station, and he owned his own lab. And he asked me if I was a journalist, actually, like pretty straight away. He was like, are you a journalist, though? And I was like, no. It's like, no, crazy question. Do I look like a journalist? No. And so he didn't know whether to trust me. So we went to his apartment. It was like the top floor of this fancy high-rise. He's a total family man. He had lived there with his wife and kid.
Stranger.
And,
brings a stranger to his home.
Yep.
Meets a guy who says he's a drug dealer, picks him up at the train station, says, hey, come to where my kids sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so then he showed me, because they had the website. A lot of these companies in China, they make legitimate chemicals and recreational chemicals. And they specialize in drugs that are legal in China, but banned in the West. So banned in the U.S. So
what is illegal in China?
Well, in the U.S., we have this thing called the Federal Analog Act. And so that bans all these drugs even before they're invented. So anything that's similar to marijuana structurally or in effect, anything that's similar to opioids is just automatically banned, automatically scheduled. But in China, they have to do it one by one by one by one. And so fentanyl itself was scheduled in China, was banned in China decades ago. But these chemists, like this one I met, specialize in this window when something is banned in the U.S., but it's still legal in China, but it's become popularized on the internet. So there's all these websites, these web forums where these drug nerds basically are like, you can't get fentanyl, but you can get this thing that's kind of like fentanyl. And
that's a
what
hilarious
this guy
term,
said.
by the way. Drug nerds.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they are. And like
Jesus.
psychonauts, I'm sure you've heard of psychonauts,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
They specialize in these new, usually psychedelics, they tend to prefer, that have never been tested on human subjects. But this guy was entirely specialized in fentanyl analogs and synthetic cannabinoids. And so he took out, he had his like fake list on his website of all the legitimate, like Cialis and, legitimate pharmaceuticals, things like that. But at his apartment, he showed me the real list. And that had all these, it was cannabinoids, fentanyl. It was like fake Valium, like different types of Xanax. And he showed me the prices, and I was like, all right, looks good. Can I go see your lab? And so finally he decided he trusted me. He called up his driver on the phone, and the driver showed up, and he was kind of this big, like, muscular dude who didn't speak any English. And I was a little worried. I was like, oh, this is the dude who's going to break my kneecaps when he finds out I'm a journalist, But I just got in the car, and we drove like 30 minutes to the outskirts of Shanghai. And we got to the lab, and it just looked like a regular office park, like a suburban office park. There was a fountain in front of the building. There was like, you use the key card to get in the parking lot. And then it looked like kind of a new construction building. It smelled like cement. We went inside. We went up to the labs. All the windows were open. It was the middle of the winter, and it was kind of a strong chemical smell. But it looked kind of just like Breaking Bad, like, like industrial-sized glassware, beakers, Bunsen burners, all that stuff from high school chemistry. And he points up, like, basically I had my recorder, on my phone, and I had it in my jacket pocket just on record. And so he told me I couldn't take pictures. And so to take notes, I would just say stuff aloud. I'd be like, oh, that's orangish, a light orange mixture that's being mixed up by a mechanical arm. And you say it's benzofentanyl, very interesting. And so, but the language barrier was such that he, didn't think I was being too much of a weirdo. But even though I clearly was. But the cannabinoids were crazy. There was like a table like this, like almost exactly this size, that was piled up with the cannabinoids that were there for drying. And they were mounds like this high, just sitting right out in the open.
What'd they look like? Does it look like pot?
No, because it's not a plant, It's just basically, it's a chemical that's sprayed onto plant matter, like dried sage and stuff like that.
Really?
So they try to make it look like pot, and you can smoke that stuff out of a pipe or even roll it into a joint. But if you look closely, though, it's very clearly not pot.
Wow. And so they're drying this stuff?
That's what I think. They also had like drying machines. It looked like my editor didn't like it when I used this term, but when you go into Subway and there's the bread baking machines right there.
Yeah.
It looked exactly like that.
Why did he not like that term if that's what
I don't know.
Like?
I think he thought Subway would sue us or something.
Jesus Christ.
But they had those, and then they had like big buckets of 1 pound bags of these cannabinoids and these fentanyl analogs just ready for shipping. He said they were sending them to Russia, to Belgium, to the Netherlands. And then I think a lot of times it's repackaged there. And so I don't know if you knew that the cannabinoids like used to be sold legally in head shops like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would always be in these colorful packets. They almost look like a Pop Rocks package. They say like
Spice,
spice and laugh out loud and stuff. And so I think in Europe, that's where they do that. They put it in this colorful packaging. They and then they ship it to the U.S. And but yeah, he was saying that like he kept like really close track of the law in all these countries, especially China. Like they're scheduling this next week, so we're going to take all this and throw it away. And I thought at first he was like probably just putting me on, but I think they actually do that. Like these guys are businessmen first. They want to make money, and going afoul of the law, it just doesn't, it's not conducive.
This is where bath salts came from, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Bath salts tend to be cathinones. So synthetic cathinones. Have you ever heard of the cat plant? KHAT.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
so
the hijackers, pirates in Somalia.
They take
love
that.
To take
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah.
it's really popular in the Middle East. It's like it's a stimulant. It gets you really.
Have you tried it?
No, I never have. Yeah, but I grew up in Minnesota though, and there's a big Somali population, and so there was a big controversy in Minnesota whether or not to ban cat leaves from being sold in regular stores.
Is it legal?
I think it is. I think it's not legal in the U.S. now, if I'm not, but I don't know for sure.
Interesting.
But so
It's KHAT. Is that?
yeah, exactly. And so the synthetic cathinones are the synthetic version of that, like made in a lab. But they're there's tons of different kinds. You don't know how strong it is, and the bath salts. Of course, it has nothing to do with like salts for your bath. This was a misnomer, and they also called them like incense, and sometimes plant food. And on the back of all of them, it would say not intended for human consumption. So that was like the way they got around. They thought they could get around the Federal Analog Act because part of the law says that something is automatically illegal if it's intended for human consumption. So these guys are like, not intended for human consumption.
Right. Just put it in your bath.
Yeah.
Your bath smells like fucking toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the homeless guy ate someone's face? Remember that? And they said he was on bath salts?
Yeah, but that was actually disproven. There was none found in his system.
He was just crazy?
The Causeway cannibal, I think they call him. Yeah.
And he was just crazy, right?
I think he may have like smoked some weed, but yeah, I don't think he had anything else in his system. Yeah.
That was just high on life.
Yeah. Oh man, Florida. The original Florida man.
Yeah, it is. It's funny that one state is so synonymous with fuckery.
Yeah. And they also had this thing called Flocka. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have, but I don't remember what it is.
It's more cathinones. And like if you look it up on YouTube, there's all these people going crazy. That killed like, I think maybe 100 people in Florida during a time. And the problem is, like the prohibition on drugs causes people to do really stupid things, right? So you have this cathinone like Flocka. And as bad as that was, once they banned Flocka, the chemists started manipulating the chemical structure. So they change one little thing. They add like a chlorine group, for example. So like a chlorine like molecule, it has nothing to do with the drug, but they just add it on there to make it so it becomes legal. But then it becomes more difficult for your body to like digest it. So it becomes worse for you, and the high becomes worse. And then they ban that, and then they make something new that's even worse for you, and it's just like down the line. And these Chinese, so that's what all these new drugs have in common. My book is about they're called NPS, novel psychoactive substances. So fentanyl is the most famous and the most dangerous, but these include basically like synthetic new versions of every drug. So there's marijuana, the NPS version is the synthetic cannabinoids. Heroin, the NPS version is fentanyl. There's LSD. So you take LSD. It's like a wonder drug, right? No one has ever died of an LSD overdose. People may have thought they were a bird or whatever and jumped off a roof, but no one has ever overdosed on the drug itself. But once they started really cracking down on LSD, these Chinese chemists started manufacturing this new type of psychedelic that was sold as acid. And so if you went on the dark web, this was like in the 10 years ago or so, 10 years ago, you would search for acid and you would think you were buying LSD, but you were buying this new psychedelic that could kill you and did kill you. These drugs are called N-bombs. It's like the worst name of all time. These N-bomb drugs, and they started killing people in like the suburbs in Dallas.
Your phone's ringing.
Ooh, fail. And yeah.
You really were a music editor.
Yeah. So these kids all thought they just wanted, they did their research. These were like smart kids who said, oh, LSD has never killed anyone. Let's get this new thing, and it killed them.
And so it wasn't really LSD. It was just
it totally, nothing in common at all. Yeah.
I know that privacy always comes up. People always talk about it. But I guess I keep going back to my same point, which was I don't see people like with pitchforks and the torches going down to complain to Jeff Bezos that Amazon's collecting massive amounts of data, or T-Mobile and Sprint and all these are mapping our locations as we move around. I just don't see it. I mean, that probably raised nobody's interest for the most part. That article that you just pulled up, and I guess in part it's because we become kind of used to it, become accustomed to it. So fine, but. What should we be worried about? Well, I tell you what we should be worried about mostly is state-sponsored activity by countries whose interests almost never align with ours. Now, it would include China. It certainly includes Russia, includes Iran. The shit that they're doing. China has a policy, information domination, right? Which means they've determined that the next war, the next modern large-scale war is going to be won by whoever has control over information. So where are they putting all their resources? China knows that they're not going to build a military that's going to be able to reach around the globe for the most part, although they're beefing up their resources. What are they doing? It's cyber and it's space, right? So I know a lot of people were kicking the president in the ass and laughing about the Space Force because it is funny, right? But the uniforms would be amazing. But they talk about this, but China honestly believes, and is putting their resources into cyber and to space. And what does that mean? Well, if their anti-satellite technology that they've been developing and working on and continue to work on, the whole point of that is to take control of communications and surveillance abilities, whether it's ours or our allies, in the event of something major that happens.
So they would have the ability to shut off our satellites?
Yeah. And if you do that, then what does that mean? Well, it means you're blind, right? And we're all suddenly walking around with compasses and maps, trying to shoot an azimuth and figure out where the target is.
So China is currently developing that, or they have developed something that disrupts
They're working
satellites?
on it now. Yeah, they're working on it now. They developed some of it. They're working to get the next generation. It's like every nation that has the resources and ability understands that and is doing the same. It's not like we're not.
Right. What is their excuse?
They don't have an excuse. They understand. They have the right to do it. I mean, it's not like they.
Right. As long as they don't use it in an illegal way, they have the right to develop the tech. It's like
there's no treaty that says you can't develop anti-satellite technology, right? There's the START treaties, there's the nuclear conventions that we have with Russia, which is a whole other interesting topic because we're right now arguing with the Russians over the latest nuke agreement that took place some time ago. It's coming up for renewal sometime soon, a year or 2 years from now, and the Russians have been cheating on a previous agreement, and so we're, now they're trying to say we're cheating on the new one, and so that's an interesting thing to be watching. But the point being is that there's conventions that try to, control the numbers for warheads or for delivery mechanisms, missiles or submarines or whatever, bombers, but not for this new world, cyberspace. The Pentagon's still trying to figure out what a war means in cyberspace.
Right.
How do you respond? What's the threshold? And then what's an appropriate response? And so, maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll start having these discussions and create treaties that will allow that. But right now, from China's perspective, again, not to beat on China, but I'm much more concerned about China for our national security. They're a much bigger concern than Russia is. Russia's punching above its weight. And Putin's a dick, no doubt about it, right? And they're doing what they always do, which is meddle in democracy. That's been their methodology ever since they've been around.
Yeah.
But that's small potatoes. They've got the GDP of a small European country, and when the oil prices, are in the toilet, they really are going to win. So, yeah, we got to be concerned with Russia and understand that their interests are never aligned with ours, for the most part. Maybe we tried to imagine they were with Syria and ISIS and everything. But Russia's only interest there was maintaining their leverage and increasing it and not losing their military foothold there. That was their primary interest. We mirror our values and we mirror our interests on other countries. And so we imagined that somehow we were all in this fight against ISIS together. So yeah, China's a much bigger issue, and we should be focused on that. And to some degree, this administration is. So that's where I say, look, you can't just keep complaining and bitching and moaning because you don't like President Trump. There's certain things that are going on that you should be willing to say, that makes sense. Maybe I don't like the messenger, but that part of it makes sense.
Is it his personal, is it because of his dealings with China from the business world that he understands it better? That he's more concerned with the imbalance of the trade?
I think what happened was, what do I know? This is speculation. So, hey, but I suspect that what happened was he came into it focused on the trade imbalance, right? And as he was sitting there and talking about the trade imbalance, more of the conversation from the National Security Council and from the agency and others in terms of saying, well, yeah, this is part of the reason why, and this is the long-term effects of their theft of intellectual property. This is why, in part, they've been successful in these areas. So I think there was probably more and more discussion talking about their economic espionage and theft of IP, and that became then an issue for him. But I think initially, and still to this day, I think the big issue is just he wants to try to create a win in terms of the trade imbalance.
Russia seems to us here domestically, at least speaking for myself, when I think about it and I think about the narrative that's been sort of delivered to us, is that Russia is this military danger. We're worried about Putin taking over other countries. We're worried about Putin's power, the way he kills dissidents, the way he kills political opponents and journalists. We think about China, and even with the Huawei arrests, we're like, no one seems to be concerned. It doesn't seem to light any bulbs over here.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't know why that is, except, Putin's more like a thug.
He's a visual.
Right. Right, and also, I mean, look, he's been very clear about wanting to try to rebuild the Soviet Union. So whether it's Crimea and the annexation of that, or whether taking over eastern Ukraine, or maintaining a position in Georgia, whatever it is, he, certainly, his attacks or the FSB's attacks overseas against dissidents and others. Yeah, he's just more in your face. He's like Tony Soprano, right? And so you can look at that. China's always been, sort of this thing, right? And look, China's fantastic. The history is amazing. The places are incredible. I think it's, we should be trading with China. We should be doing a huge amount of business with China. We should, clear the decks and try to the degree we can level the playing field. But we should also be pragmatic and realize what they do, in terms of their theft of IP. And so, because that probably won't change. But yeah, we absolutely should be dealing with China all the time. But I think that they've always kind of been viewed more in more of a sophisticated fashion, maybe, because Putin is just sort of in your face. And he's good at it. He's very successful. He's a smart son of a bitch. But I think he's pretty easy to read, right? He's thuggish, and he longs for those days of the Soviet Union. So we should understand that everything he does is because of that. It's because he would love to rebuild the Soviet Union. And so we shouldn't be surprised by any sort of aggressive move that he makes against his neighbors, and we should always push back. And to be fair, this administration, not to beat their drum, but the actions they've taken against Russia, despite the fact that you've got people calling him a puppet of Putin, are more significant than the previous administration took.
Like, what has he done?
The sanctions against key individuals and companies within Russia, as an example. Those are the toughest sanctions have been placed on Russia ever. The provision of weapons and assistance to the Ukrainians, right? That was something the previous administration said, no, not going to do that, because we don't want any blowback. That's a good thing, right? That should be done. Pushing back against them on the 2011 nuke deal. Right, on the previous, on the START deal prior to the 2011 deal, and calling them out and saying, look, you're cheating on this, and you got to be held accountable. I mean, there's certain things there that make sense, and that don't add up. If you talk to somebody who says, well, he's an absolute puppet, and you say, well, okay, he's a puppet, so why is he doing certain things that seem counter to Russian interests? And they'll say, well, because he's smart, and he's like, he doesn't want to get caught out. Right. See, he's playing a long game here, and and I'm thinking, okay, maybe who knows, but I haven't strapped on my tinfoil hat yet to get to that point, so I don't know.
Yeah, that seems like a complicated one if they have some compromising information about him. That was always the fear, right? Is that they knew something, or
Yeah.
maybe it was business dealings, maybe it was people peeing on them, or
Yeah,
something
look,
like that.
if they did, and again, anything, fucking hell, in today's world, anything's possible, right?
Right.
And I wish we had somebody else in there who was more elegant and eloquent and sophisticated. And
Does anybody stand out to you?
Not right now, no.
Online
Because
fraud
we're living
is
in
crazy.
we're living in the golden age of scams.
I get like 30
as you know.
texts a day. The dude that owned my phone number before me,
Right.
this dude Raymond, was a moron.
Right.
And Raymond, you fucking idiot. Did you sign up for everything? Because this
I did
guy,
too.
like every day, like, hey, Raymond,
it's
like,
crazy.
your loan's been approved.
So really fun. I'm going to come on your podcast next year once I'm done with this project, but I'm working on a really fun project for National Geographic, which is where I say yes to every single scam that comes my way.
Oh, boy.
I've been filming it for a few months, and it's been the craziest, wildest journey of
Can
my
you
life.
tell us?
I can't.
No?
I can't.
Okay.
I just can tell you
When
that
will
I
you-
have romantic relationships with people.
Damn.
I spend a lot of time on my burner phone with people love bombing me.
Really?
But it's not. It's a fake persona. Like
Right.
I put a wig and glasses. And
Oh,
I'm
so you use your own picture. You don't even use AI?
No, I don't use AI. We actually sort of modified. We put a fake nose on me and
Oh, okay.
a wig and glasses. But people say it doesn't look at all like me. I can see it's me. But I will talk. It's really fascinating. But also to talk about scams, which I can talk about a lot, is we are living in the golden age of scams. I think it was Warren Buffett that said fraud and scams are the number one growth industry of our time. And one of the stories we did, which is so sad, and I hate to bring it down back to a sad topic, but is that I didn't know this before starting to report on it, which a lot of times you think, these scammers, these guys that are texting and emailing you and calling you, that these are, people in West Africa or, wherever, but like loan operators. Well, we did a story about these scam factories. Have you heard of these?
No.
It's these compounds in places like Cambodia and Myanmar in Asia where it's basically factories sometimes with thousands and thousands of people, forced labor. So these are mostly people from India, sometimes Brazil, other Asian countries. The Philippines is a big place where they respond to ads to work in what they think are legitimate businesses, to work in online companies and whatnot. And they pay for their expenses to travel to these places, to Cambodia and Myanmar. In Myanmar, they're operating out of this area that's an ongoing civil war and is ruled by these militias. And they get in there, and as soon as they get in, they take away their passports, and they're trapped, and they're forced to scam. So they spend 24/7 scamming Americans and European people.
Wow.
And it is an industry where they're making billions of dollars. The U.S. government just recently seized $15 billion from one company, from one group of people alone in crypto. It's the craziest thing. So these people are being tortured and beaten, sometimes killed, and forced to scam. So we went actually to Myanmar. We were smuggled into the border, into Myanmar, into the country illegally.
Whoa.
Across the river, and spent time in this town that was basically built by this Chinese gang that was all with the money of scamming Americans. And they were trying to build like a mini Macau. And the guy that ran the company is called Yatai International, and he took us on a tour of this mini Macau. And it was so surreal. It was like these aqua parks with no one in the aqua park and these luxury casinos. We ended the night, it was so crazy. This guy said he would give us an interview, but first we had to do the tour. And the interview would happen the next day. So we ended a night, this was actually not filmed, in a karaoke. That was a massive room where every wall and the ceiling was all a screen. It was like the future. And this is in a war-torn area of a country that's incredibly poor, and they've built this place with millions and billions of dollars from profits of scamming. Wow. And we ended the night with this guy who's basically the head of this criminal Chinese gang running these scams. in this karaoke singing Celine Dion and Whitney Houston and being poured whiskey and whatever high-end brand we wanted.
You were getting drunk with him?
Oh my God, yes. I was singing my heart out. I spent the whole night singing Whitney Houston. The videos are so embarrassing because I cannot sing to save my life. But I was like, we need to get this guy on tape, so I'm just going to do whatever.
Wow.
And then the next day we interviewed him, and it was just fucking crazy. Then we ended our last day. I mean, we interviewed a Chinese dude, so sad, like 21-year-old, who was caught trying to escape and was chased out of the building. He ran out of a third floor, broke both his legs, one at the hip, practically died, was actually saved by an onlooker who took him to the hospital and then moved to Thailand where I met him. He was in a wheelchair. Told us about beatings. We spoke to another Indian kid also who was, they had a water hose on his body. He was forced to stand for 24 hours and then electrocuted. And I mean, the videos out of these places were insane. Like people with horrific wounds and people dying and killed. And just forced
so they're being forced into scamming.
Yeah, forced into scamming. And then we interviewed a girl called Angel who was raped repeatedly by her bosses, and she's sort of the face model. So a lot of times after speaking to these what they think are romantic relationships for a long time, they want to see people's faces. So this is the girl that then they put a fake AI face on top of her, but it has to be a girl because of the mannerisms and the voice. And they have this girl who actually speaks English. And she would talk to victims of scams and pretend that she was the wonderful woman that they'd been dating for months, and convince them to put their money into this crypto business that was fake, and take millions out of these victims. So this woman starts crying and telling me how she knows she's doing something awful, and how she's raped and how she doesn't want to be doing. And at the end, she says, I said yes to doing this, even though it's incredibly dangerous. But I accepted doing this because I just want a message for the victims in America, the people that I've spoken to, that I'm sorry. I just want to apologize for all the harm that I've caused. And she's like in tears, but I have no way out. I mean, these are heart-wrenching stories. And the last day we were there, we were able to... there's this amazing organization called Acts of Mercy, religious-based organization that is working to try to get these people out. And a lot of these bosses actually, if you can pay for ransom, you can pay $10,000 to save a person from there. So because if you're a bad scammer, if you're there and you're horrible and if you're sad and depressed and you're not doing your job, it's better for these bosses if you just get paid $10,000 to let this person go. So there was this case of the Filipino woman who the boss had agreed to a $12,000 payment to release her. But it's really dangerous there's this negotiator that goes and sort of tries to get her out of this compound. But he has to come with the money, and he has to be able to pay the crime boss, but he also has to pay the militias to get him in. So it was like a whole process. And we were with this group, Acts of Mercy and another guy, filming them as they're on the phone negotiating her release. And they're on the phone with her. She's inside the scam center, and she's like, where do I go? This scam center is massive. She had no idea where to go. And they're saying, go to the west gate, and the guy is there waiting for you. She's like, I don't know where to go. And she's crying. If they see me with the phone, because it's a confiscated phone, they're going to beat me, and they're going to put me in the dark room where I'm beaten and, tortured for days. And Amy, the woman on this side, is telling her, believe us. There's somebody waiting for you. Do not be afraid. Bring your phone. We need to be telling you how to get there. It was his whole ordeal. It was like insane. It was out of a movie. And in the end, they didn't manage to get her out. But she was not that day, but she was released a month later, and she made it to safety. But this just to show how dangerous and difficult it is, even when they agree to let them go. And
so what are most of the scams? Are most of the scams romantic?
Crypto scams. They're called pig butchering scams.
Pig butchering?
Yeah, that's the name they give them because it's an Chinese expression. It started in China. It started as a domestic scam in China, actually. And yeah, pig butchering, because the idea is that you fatten the pig, which is your victim, and then you kill them at the end, right?
Oh,
and which that's why it's called
How
pig
evil.
butchering. But the idea is that you meet somebody online, and it's usually a beautiful girl or man, and you start a relationship with that person. You start.
How do they meet them?
You know those texts that you get a lot of times, like, "Hey, I haven't talked to you in a while."
Yes.
A lot of those are pig butchering scams. A lot of messages you get on Instagram from these beautiful girls or
They're stepping
men.
it up because I got a few iMessages like
Yeah,
that.
me
I
too.
was like, whoa.
Me too.
Not even just a green text
Right.
bubble anymore. They got iPhones
Right.
now.
And then they tell you, follow me on Instagram, and then you go, let's go on WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're sending you photos of them in their private jets and living this wonderful life.
Is that what they're doing with you?
Yes.
With your
in other
your
ways, yeah.
In other, so these scams that you're
one
responding
of the one
to?
we're trying to get is that we're getting several different kinds of scams, like Indian call centers and all of the different scams. But eventually they start saying, look, we are living. And so you're curious, like, how are you making so much money? It's like, oh, yeah, I've been investing in crypto and, I can't really tell you much about it now. So it can last months. And at some point they're like, okay, I've built a
fattening the
relationship.
pig.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you how I do it. You've got $5,000 right now, and then you put the $5,000, and then they show profit on these fake websites. It looks completely legitimate. And you're saying, oh my God, I put 5,000 and now I have 10. How much more can I put in? So people are going all in, and they're
boy.
like everything they have, 401ks, they're remortgaging their houses, everything. And then, did you hear the case about the guy in Kansas?
No.
The bank
No.
guy, the guy that was the head of this bank in Kansas. Jamie, did you hear about this? It's a fucking fascinating story. It was a story in the New York Times, and then it got reported everywhere. I was trying to get this guy to talk to me because his story is fascinating. So this guy, amazing member of the community, small town in Kansas, the local bank that was started by the farmers decades ago. It's where all the farm community would put their money, would trust this bank. Well, it turns out that this guy, the head of this bank that everybody trusted, upstanding member of the community, stole millions of dollars from the bank, and the bank went bankrupt. And he was stealing the money because he was being scammed by a pig butchering scam. And it started with him putting his own money. And then they kept on saying that in order to release the funds and all the millions that he'd made from his initial investment, he would put in more and more money. I think he ended up putting in something like
$47
$1
million
million from
customer accounts to scammers, depleting the bank's holdings. When a state banking regulator uncovered this fraud, it closed the bank and called the FBI. Whoa. He started slow, investing a few $1,000s in 2022 to buy what he thought was cryptocurrency. Oh, my goodness.
How sad is that?
Wow.
I mean, awful. Obviously, he was stealing from his customers.
Wow.
But I find it so. He actually traveled to Australia at one point, thinking he was going to meet the people that owed him money. I mean, he actually was completely scammed. And this is the head of a
Banker.
bank. Head of a fucking bank.
Wow.
It's fucking crazy. These guys are so good.
That's crazy.
bananas.
They get a banker, but
Yeah.
is a banker in Kansas, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on.
Be mean.
Sorry, Kansas. But you know what I'm saying.
Well, he's in prison now.
Oh, well, he should be. He stole
Yeah, I
$47 million.
know.
But he's also a dumbass. And the crazy
But
thing
he's-
is that you could be a dumbass and be a smart person if greed gets involved.
Yeah,
Greed is like, for greed, I think greed for shady people, it's almost, it's kind of fascinating because you got to know at one point in time this is not smart. But the greed is like, but what if it is?
But I think more than greed, I think it's the acceptance that you have lost all that money. And that must weigh so heavily on you. If you have, if you're about to foreclose your home, if you'd sent all the money from your kids' college funds, if...
I mean
if
the banker.
Oh, yeah, but
Yeah,
even the
but,
banker.
I mean, but
but even the banker, he sent all his, initially it was
Right,
all
but then he
his
started
money.
stealing. That's all greed.
I don't think, I think it got to a point that he was swindled and made to believe that if you give more money, he would get the money that he
When you
initially
think after
invested
like
back.
1 million,
And
you'd
he would
realize
be
you
able
getting
to put
lied
back
to?
the $45 million that he stole from his customers.
boy.
I think the realization, and this is something that I know from talking to so many scamming victims, it's not so much about wanting to make that money. It's the realization that you've been talking to somebody that's not real and that you have been so swindled. And, I don't want to use the word dumb because I think all of us can fall victims to these scams. But that the acceptance of that is really difficult. So you just want to keep on believing it. You just pay whatever you need to pay so the dream stays alive.
Yeah, there's a Carl Sagan quote about that it's easier to convince a person, like it's harder to, like once a person has been swindled, it's much more difficult to convince them of the swindle.
Yeah.
They'll find ways to justify that it must be true. Are you anticipating seeing like a lot of freaky things come out of China?
Yes.
Whoa. You said that very quick.
Yeah, no, it's true. I spend a lot of time in China. And this, it's a different. I mean, the thing with China has this great ancient civilization, but they destroyed their own civilization in the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. They burned their books. They smashed their own historic relics. And so it's a society in many ways that's starting from scratch. And so all of these norms that people inherit through their traditions, China in many ways doesn't have. And so it's a very different, and China is growing. I mean, they are increasingly powerful, and China is going to be a major force defining the world of the 21st century. That's why America has to get its act together.
That's a hard concept for us to grasp when we think about the fact that they had the Great Wall, they have so much ancient art and architecture. We just assume they're a really old culture.
They are, but they wiped it out.
That's so crazy.
That's why if you want to see great Chinese art, you have to go to Taiwan, because when the Chinese nationalists left in 1949, when they lost, as they were losing the Civil War, they took the treasures and they put them in the National Museum of Taiwan. In the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, China, the Red Guards were just smashing all of their own stuff, their own ancient history. And now the Chinese Communist Party is saying, oh no, we're going back and we have this great 5,000-year-old culture. And in some ways it's true, but in some ways it's like an adolescent culture without these kinds of restrictions that other societies have.
That's such a unique perspective that I haven't heard before. It makes so much sense in terms of like how frantic they are at restructuring their world.
Yeah. And they feel that they got screwed over because there is this vague sense of Chinese greatness. When you hear the word Middle Kingdom, it's like China's the center of the world and everybody else is some kind of tributary. And so they're monumentally pissed off that these colonial powers came and overpowered them, and they had to make all these concessions. They had to give land away, and they're whole bent on regaining it.
They're playing the long game.
They are playing a long game, and we have to be mindful of it.
That's also something you can do if you have complete control of your population. You don't have to worry about people's opinions, or you can just go in the direction that you feel is going to benefit the Chinese power, the power that be.
Well, this is a country run by engineers. We're a country run largely by lawyers and reality TV people, I guess.
Yeah.
But in China, it's run by engineers. So there are all these problems, and the answer is always engineering. So if you have a population problem, the answer is the one-child policy. Environmental problem, you have Three Gorges Dam. You don't have water in the north of China. You build this massive, biggest water project in the world from south to north. You want to win in the Olympics, you engineer your population, you take kids away from their families and put them in their Olympic sports school. So I write about this in Genesis Code. If you're China and you kind of have this Plato's Republic model of the world, and we're going to kind of identify the genetic, or maybe manipulate these genetic superstars to be our greatest scientists and mathematicians and business leaders and political leaders, like there's a model that you can imagine for how to do it.
Wow. It makes you really nervous.
It should. Yes. That's the thing. No, it's like, that's why, like, I just feel like with this country, we don't have time to have all these distractions. We're focusing on junk.
Like what?
It just like all of this. I'm on CNN all the time when I'm home in New York, and I always say, like, you guys, and I'm talking about kind of geopolitical issues, China and North Korea. What I always say is, like, you guys recognize this is porn. Like CNN and MSNBC, that's like one kind of porn, and Fox and whomever else, InfoWars, that's another kind of porn. But it's all porn. And we're drawing people's attention to these few stories. But there's these big stories that we have to focus on. And certainly the rise of China is such an essential story for the 21st century, because China is competing in all of these technologies. And China, it's like go, go, go. I mean, people in China who are involved in the tech world, when they go and visit Silicon Valley, uniformly they say, we cannot believe these people are so lazy. Like, why are they not working 24 hours a day? Why are they not issuing new products every week? And so this is, I mean, they are racing somewhere, and it's going to have huge implications for the world. And so if we believe in our values, as I believe we should, we have to fight for them. And the place that we have to fight for them first is here. And we can't, it's just like every day that we're just focusing on this drama, this reality TV drama of our government is another day where we're not focusing on the big things. How are we going to get our act together? How are we going to lead the world in technology? I mean, if another example is immigration. Like, we have this whole fight of how do we keep people out? What I'd like to do is to go to the State Department and say, all right, every embassy in the world, you have a new job. We're going to give you whatever number, 500 slots per year. You have to, in your country, find the 500 most brilliant, talented, creative, entrepreneurial people and say, we're giving you a green card. We're going to give you a little starter money. We want you to move to the United States and just start a life and have kids. And we should be creaming the crop, skimming the cream of the rest of the world. Like, we could take over, we could revitalize this country, but we're having this fight of how do we keep a small number of refugees out? And it's just, we're not focusing on the right things.
That's again another very, very interesting perspective. We learned about Huawei in this country, really, but not just. Well, I learned about it because they put out some pretty innovative phones and some interesting technology. But we learned it because the State Department was telling people to stop using their phones.
Yep.
Do you think that is trying to stifle the competition, because the market share that they have, if they do really have the number 2 selling cell phones in the world now, that's not from America. America's largely out of that conversation.
Right.
And if they were in America, they would probably dominate in America as well.
Because they're cheaper.
Yeah, and they're really good.
Yeah.
I mean, their phones are insane. The cameras in their phones are off the charts.
Yep.
They put some video of the zoom capability of their newest phone, and people were calling it. There's no way, that's not even possible. But it turned out it was true.
Yeah.
It really can zoom like a super expensive telephoto lens.
Sure. Yeah. So Huawei, it's a complicated story. For sure, the founder of Huawei is a former Chinese military officer. For sure. In the early stages of their company, they straight out stole lots of source code from companies like Cisco. For sure, we should be really worried if Huawei is the sole supplier of the infrastructure that supports 5G all around the world, because the Chinese government would have access to everything. And so that leads us to the question is, one, is there a problem with Huawei itself? But then two is, let's just say, and so I think the answer to that first question is probably yes. But then the question two is, let's just say Huawei is a legit company and they're not totally intimately connected to the Chinese government. Can we trust their relationship with the Chinese government? And the Chinese government has a rule that every one of these companies has, the big Chinese national champion companies, they have a Communist Party cell inside of that company. And so I think that we can't think of big Chinese companies just like we think of companies here. We have to think of them as quasi-state actors. And that's why this fight that's happening right now is so important. And that's why, like, when China is out investing in different parts of the world, including Africa, their companies are kind of acting like arms of the government. I mean, they're making all kinds of investments that don't really make sense if you just see, well, this is a company doing something. If you say that this is a company with backing by the state that's fulfilling a function that supports the state, it's a very different model. So I am actually quite concerned about Huawei, and I'm not a fan of everything that this administration is doing. But I think on China, it's important that we need to stand up, and I think pushing back on Huawei is the right thing to do.
I'm uncomfortable about this for two reasons. One, I'm uncomfortable about the Chinese government being inexorably connected to this global superpower in technology. Right. But I'm also uncomfortable that it sets a precedent for other nations to follow.
Yeah.
Because they're like, look, this is the only way to compete. Because what you
Right.
were talking about, the investments that Huawei
Right.
or that the Chinese government makes in these other
Yeah.
these countries, and that don't seem to make sense if you're just dealing with a
Right.
company.
Right.
But if you're dealing with someone
Yeah.
who's trying to take over the world,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so when we have our companies that you're out in someplace in Africa and you're competing with a Chinese company to do something, build a port or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're competing because you are an American company. And so you have your calculus, all right, this is the port, what's the income stream going to be about it? And you have a certain amount that you can bid because otherwise it becomes a bad investment. But if the Chinese company is that their calculus is not, is this a good or bad investment? It's what is the state interest in controlling or quasi-controlling this asset? And so that's why we can't project ourselves onto the Chinese. We can't say they're just like us,
Right.
just different. We have different models, and our models are competing.
Do you think that we should avoid Huawei products like consumers should?
I think the government should very tightly regulate products like Huawei products.
Because
And
some
they-
of their network, like routers,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
they've shown that they're using them to
Yes,
extract
yeah.
information.
And so we have a long history of European, Japanese, South Korean companies that have invested very well. They've outcompeted us, and we allowed the Japanese companies to outcompete our auto manufacturers, and that was fine in the sense in the 1970s our cars had become shit because we had this monopoly. And so I'm all for open competition. I'm all for free trade. It has to be fair. But I think that what China is doing, China recognized as a state that they could use the tools of capitalism to achieve state ends. And I think we need to be very cautious about that.
That's interesting that you compare it to the automotive market because the consequences are so much different, right?
So much different because
But we do have a model to go on. We could see
Yeah.
what happened. We made shitty cars. The Japanese took over.
and then we made better cars. Like
Yes.
I have a rental car here in Los Angeles, and I went to the rental car place at LAX, and they had all of the different cars, and there was like a Nissan and a Toyota, and there was a Cadillac. And I thought, I said, I'm going to go with the Caddy. So it's a great car, and so I think
They're amazing.
they're incredible.
Yeah, American cars are very good now.
They're great.
Yeah.
And so like I'm all for competition, but I just feel like what some Chinese companies are doing, it's not competition. They have become, not all of them, but quasi-state actors. And if that's what they're doing, I think we need to respond to them in that way.
Interesting.
The biggest thing that the left does is this. You say there's a problem, which is a legit problem. You say, London's now a minority country. There are these young Muslim men, for example, who are not assimilating and are becoming militant and fundamentalist. Okay, you say something like that. What then a leftist will say is they'll go, instead of like debating that issue, which is a problem, you're just stating a problem, okay? They will say, oh, you're Islamophobic, you're xenophobic, and you're racist. So they diagnose you. I'm stealing this from Nick Freitas, by the way, so shout out to Nick Freitas. But that's what they'll do. They'll diagnose the person and their personality and their character, they'll step outside of the debate.
Yeah,
So you
for
can't
sure.
have a conversation with people like that.
No,
Which
no,
is-
you can't.
But
But that's why it's scary though, is because there's no talking point. There's no common ground that you can
Discussion, yeah.
you can't agree on anything.
Right.
So it's like if I'm over here and you're over here, and we both can't meet somewhere in the middle. Like
Right.
Men can't get pregnant. then
Exactly.
At some point, you just have to fight.
Right,
Like,
because
there's
I'm going to
no
stop it and call
discussion.
you a transphobe
either
and turn my back
You got
on
to
you.
divorce, or you have to fight.
But don't you think that this is on purpose? I think it's
I
to
do.
keep each other at each other's
100%.
throats.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's to keep us in chaos so that they can implement more control.
And it's working.
yeah.
Well, is it? Or are we starting to get wise to the fact that we're all being gamed?
It's a battle.
Yeah.
It's a battle.
Are the
but it's
masses
working.
get wise to it, though?
Well, it's working on a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are just falling right in.
Yeah.
They're falling right in line. And and if you tell them that they're homophobic or xenophobic or transphobic, they'll do whatever the fuck they can to
Yeah.
avoid that label, and so then they fall right into your trap.
Although Trump did get elected, and it seems like that argument by the left is starting to lose a lot of its steam.
Yeah, but he only got elected by half the country,
Yeah.
right? The other half the country didn't want him. and
That's a
hates
lot of
him.
people.
It's a
Yeah,
lot of
it's a
people.
lot of people.
So it worked on a lot of people. They were in the process of implementing a plan. And that plan, if it worked, would have made this country a one-party state.
But disliking Trump and disliking those policies are two different things, right? So there are
Right.
people that are conservative who don't like Trump. There are people that are moderate Democrats or Republicans who don't like Trump. My question is, you would know this better. How much of this stuff online is
Real?
Is real? Bots. How
A
much?
huge percentage.
Really? Still?
The
There's
internet is like the opposite of real life.
An
Like-
FBI analyst said as many as 80% of the people that are posting on Twitter are bots.
What?
Posting what though? Just political shit?
All kinds of stuff.
Everything.
Climate, politics, race, gender. There was that China just got busted using ChatGPT to run a host of different accounts, a bunch of different accounts that were all posting about USAID being shut down. They were posting about LBGTQ plus TA, whatever the fuck
Yeah,
issues.
Just to divide us
Yeah,
more.
just to
China's
divide
like,
us more.
fuck
So
that.
Brian Shaw told me that he posted a picture of him and Jordan Peterson. He always gets love, he's a strong man. And he said that he was getting all this, immediately, just all these comments that were like, how could you do this and stuff like that. Then he'd go to the profile and be like, this doesn't feel like it's real.
No, not a real person.
It's not a real person. It's
There's
just-
a giant percentage on Instagram, a giant percentage on Facebook and on Twitter that are not real. And it's legal and you can do it. And I bet we do it too. I bet corporations
Of
do
course.
it.
Yeah.
I bet you can crowdfund, by the way, on like say if Brian Callen, if you you hated Brendan Schaub, it shouldn't be the fighter and the kid. It should be the kid and the kid. Just me. Well, everybody agrees.
Joe
You
Rogan
could
said it.
literally go to a company and have them attack Brendan Schaub. And you would pay for it, and they would use their
That's been
bots.
done before on me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, it can be done on anyone. That's the point. Is like whatever your goal is. Say, let's get rid of all red lights. No more traffic lights. You could do that. You could have whatever the fuck you want. Have a bunch of fake people protest.
What a waste of fucking time.
But you can't do
but
that.
it's not really. It's not really.
Well,
waste
I
of time
guess
because
it
it's
does sway-
effective with
yeah.
dumb people.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a country doing it. Like China can do it to us.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we can't do it to them.
Right.
So
we can't get into their
so
system.
It's like they have whatever they want the people to know.
Oh,
Like,
well, we're
they run their own
completely retarded.
propaganda and then they run it against us, which
That might be the
which is
least of
issue.
our problems. We let them buy land around military bases.
Yeah, they own a shit ton of land.
Yeah.
my friend had his company attacked that way.
Oh, yeah.
They,
I mean, the
they
biggest
just-
issue with China is definitely AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The AI is like the next Manhattan
But
Project.
those two dudes you had on here with AI, they're saying we're actually still a step ahead of them.
I don't know if they know.
Did I summarize that?
Yeah,
No, you're
they
right.
they said that at the time, but I don't know if they know. Because here's the thing, they steal all the data from OpenAI. They steal data from, like, Grok just got infiltrated by this guy who stole their shit, allegedly, and then sold it to OpenAI. And OpenAI got infiltrated, allegedly, by China. Like, you've got all these Chinese
well, our
nationals
boys-
that are over here working.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
most
say.
of the AI
They're in the AI
engineers
labs.
and technicians.
They're
are
Chinese nationals.
Yeah,
Because
Chinese
remember
nationals.
when we had Tulsi Gabbard,
This was like the biggest problem America
Yeah.
is facing, for sure.
100%. Because when we had Tulsi Gabbard on the podcast, remember I was like, Russian, what did I say? Russian hackers. I kept talking about Russian hackers. And she's like, hey, off the air, she's like, just so you know, we're better at hacking than they are.
Oh, yeah.
We have better hackers. So this whole thing you keep talking about with Russians, I don't know, I kept saying Russians. She was like, America's actually has way better people to hack all that
But
shit.
it's an arms race. It's an AI race.
Yeah, the thing is, they're all together. It's the government
Against us.
with the corporations in China. They're all in lockstep. They're not like in battle with their corporations.
Corporations
know?
do what the government says.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's
well, they
lateral
tried that over
cooperation.
here with Facebook. Like
Yeah.
when Facebook, when the FBI clamped down on them, told them to get rid of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
And they did it.
Well, they didn't at Facebook. They kind of
Yeah.
limited the reach, but Twitter, they completely blocked it.
Yeah.
But the other thing that they did was they told them to get rid of factual information about COVID. Factual information. The government was contacting Zuckerberg.
Why do you think that is?
Because they didn't want vaccine hesitancy because they wanted to make more money.
Gotta get
they
in
wanted
line, bitch.
more
Was it money
people.
or did they
Money.
believe that the vaccine was saving lives?
money?
For sure,
Money.
money. For sure,
Money.
money.
Really?
Look at you. You're so cute. They just wanted to save lives.
Yeah, he's still one of those. No, Brian's still one of those guys. Brian's still one of those guys.
adorable.
I
Isn't it
really
crazy?
am.
There's not
I
a
really
goddamn
am.
I
thing
think
the government
cares
does.
about him, dude.
I really
It's
am.
not a
though.
goddamn thing the government does for you. For you make your life better. Everything they do is to either get elected, raise more money, campaign, like more money, like raising
Did you
money for causes.
It's their own
Did you
agenda.
see in the UK now? They're like we're going to deal. We have a solution to deal with mass immigration. We're going to digital IDs. So it's like they created an issue, and then they're gonna give you a solution to give them more
'Cause they get
control.
more
That's
money.
why
My thing is, how much fucking money do they
ESPN
need?
is down.
But
Look at
what
this
you
gay
just
shit.
said, what you just said about the government, whether it's true or not, that's a very important thing to keep to believe.
I had
As an
Representative
American.
Luna on the podcast. You know what she said to me? We were talking about certain issues. She goes, "They don't want to resolve those issues because they could fundraise against them."
Of course. How about
so
this?
they literally don't. They don't reach resolutions.
But my question,
on
Joe, is
person.
how much money do they need? Like,
Well, they always need new money every week.
but my thing is like Pelosi. Like, how much money does that big heavy bitch have? She has the biggest
It's like
titties.
almost it's like a half a billion.
And she just
She's
keeps
worth
going.
400 million. Yeah.
What are we doing?
that's her husband. I mean, he's always been an investor, you know.
Yeah, but
But-
the way
Oh,
he's
you're buying
doing
that.
No,
You
the
don't
way
think-
he's doing is insider trading.
Right. It doesn't mean it's not. It doesn't mean it's all on the up and up. Obviously, you know.
But I'm just saying, how much? How long does she need
Yeah,
to go?
she's
at what
82
point-
years
the,
old.
the answer to that is that government will continue to grow like a leviathan, and it does. What does it do?
Well,
It
that's why they
enforces
want
the
two
law.
parties here. They want no common talking ground between the two parties, so we just keep fighting.
Well, that might be good. You want government to fight each other, right? You want this divide and conquer thing, so government moves at a glacial pace. That would be the idea.
but government is the issue.
Yeah.
Remember when
people need
Elon was trying to
unite
start
against
the
government.
American wing? Remember that? He was like not Democrat.
Yeah, third parties never really. It's hard.
First of all, I don't
Corrupt
think you're
trial.
allowed to name it. I think we looked into that. You're not allowed to name your party the America Party.
Why?
Because
That's fair.
You can't call it America. Because then, if you go against it, you're going against America.
That's fair. That's like the
it's
Patriot
frowned
Act.
upon.
Yeah,
the
it's like-
genius of the Patriot Act was.
Well, I mean,
yeah, so
plus I
gay.
understand what
the fuck?
Elon's going to do.
I know.
But I don't know how that's going to work in effect. Like if he starts another party. It's
Oh, there
just
we go.
gonna-
It's back.
Here we go.